MFs, welcome back. Hustle Like You Broke. June 11 today. Started keeping track of that and the intros just because life moves so quickly. Ha 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 in the coronacation. But world outside, politics, festivals, news, social media being what it is. Sometimes by the time we air, things have changed. I actually think it's interesting when we record and an announcement comes out before it drops. Certainly that changes the perspective for our audience to hear us talking about something that's already happened and we didn't know it at the time. But such is the nature of podcasting and, kind of like a time capsule unto itself. So, world being what it is today, we've had the cancellation in the last couple days of the two largest festivals here in the United States. Lollapalooza, which we were just talking the other day. Pretty sure Kyle thought it was going to happen. Sorry, my friend. It is
I was
not.
wrong. I was wrong.
And Coachella too. I know you wanted it. But it's gone.
It's interesting that the cities called it, didn't they?
It's coming back.
Yeah, I'm about to say that, Dallas. Give me a minute. Thank you.
Sorry,
thank
man.
you. Thank you. No. See, this is why I don't introduce you guys till later. My bad. I'm just playing. But I was going to say something about that, and I will in just a minute. But it's not just here in the States. Of course, most of the festivals overseas have come down by now. And Fuji Rock in Japan just came down in the last 48 hours as well. We had a good experience at Fuji just a couple of years ago, Chris and I. Dallas, you were with us too, weren't you? When we went to Fuji?
Sadly, I was not with you guys in Fuji.
So Fuji is 2+ hour drive. Could be 3 from Tokyo.
It's far.
Depending on the weather, could even be further. And we'd come from Australia with Kendrick. And we had a couple of great days in Tokyo. The weather was beautiful. We had an amazing time. It's an incredible city if anyone hasn't been. And Sea Party goes ahead night before, heads up to the mountain. I don't actually know what weather they experienced. Chris, was it raining on your way?
No, it was clean. It was very clear. It was nice and peaceful. Great scenery. It's amazing.
So they get up there, and I guess they stayed in these like dorm style accommodations on the mountainside. My understanding, I didn't stay myself, but my understanding was it was less than amazing.
It's more like The Shining.
There it is. And then the rain came. And I was, of course, moving with the B Party, the band. And we drove through a fucking monsoon to get there. I mean, it was crazy driving up the side of the mountain with rain pelting the Sprinter sideways for hours. It felt like it was crazy. And we got up there and all of these people camping in a freaking storm. And I guess Chris said the day before, maybe it wasn't so bad, but my understanding is it rains like this many times at Fuji, but the fans, they're all there. The place is stuffed. It is a wild scene. We were able to do our show. There was question for a couple minutes about whether we could. The video wall we had to figure out a way to kind of fasten it on the bottom to leave it enough give, but avoid turning it into a sail because it was starting to sway pretty bad. And I feel like we had a couple of issues with lights where fixtures got shorted or something. I don't even remember. I just know it was not the complete show. But the crowd energy was amazing. We had a great night. We had a blast, and I can't wait to go back. But again, it's not going to happen this year because it's not going to happen at all, just like anywhere else in the States. Meanwhile, dear leader, President Trump is planning to resume his rallies. And of course, he's moving the convention, Republican National Convention, out of North Carolina to find a state that will accommodate large-scale gatherings for him. And similar to what we would consider a Republican ideal or tradition, NASCAR is coming back with audience in attended reduced. I love cars, I really do, but to me, I really don't get watching cars go in circles for hours and hours, smelling fumes, pollution in the air, no way to hear anybody around you, Confederate flags in every direction. Mind you, meanwhile, NASCAR has come out and said no more Confederate flags, which I completely appreciate. Of course, President takes exception to this. God only knows why. Same reason he doesn't like Confederate general statues being taken down or streets being renamed. I don't even know where to go with that. To me, it's just, I mean, apparently in his mind, these are all just good people, but what the fuck? Anyway, I'm actually glad that he's going to be hosting these rallies because we can only hope it leads to the spread of the virus to people who, at this point, still think this whole thing is a fucking hoax. Not that I want anybody to die. I definitely do not. But the notion that this thing is not real is still something that is holding this country back. And whoever thought the leader of the free world would be a German chancellor? But she has been for a while now. Perhaps our guest today knows something about that. We'll get back to him in just a few minutes. Now, I think instead of all the red Make America Great Again hats, which remind so many people of a time that never was, and infuriate others who view it as a sign of ignorance, which of course is what it is. But I respect them for wearing it because, like I said before, it's better to know who the enemy is. And I'm not saying they're the enemy because we need military-grade weapons in the streets to wage war, like the U.S. is one giant Gaza Strip or something, where both sides firmly believe that they're in the right. But if anyone out there wishes to create a green hat, says something like unite the world, unite America, make America thrive, something to that effect, I'm here to say we at this podcast will support you. We'll promote you, as long as some portion of the proceeds go to supporting sustainable efforts, supporting Black Lives Matter, supporting concert industry professionals out of work. And speaking of the concert industry, you've heard their voices already. My esteemed colleagues, Miss Christine Dallas.
Hello, how's everybody today?
Amazing.
Good.
Mr. Kyle Hamilton.
Good evening. 104 degrees here in Murrieta, California.
And my brother Banks.
Hello there, everybody.
I like that tone. Thank you. It's worth noting, in addition to the fan favorite festivals like Coachella and Lolla, IEBA, the International Entertainment Buyers Association, which is a large organization in this country among entertainment business professionals, just canceled their annual fall conference. That's a big one for agents, promoters, fair and festival buyers, casinos, etc. Basically anyone that buys and sells talent. So this thing is going to keep going. It's going to keep going for a while now. But I did want to ask my associates, in Dallas, you alluded to this already. Isn't it interesting that the cancellations are not coming from the promoters, but they're coming by way of government officials? The city of Chicago, Riverside County, Southern California. Dallas, you brought it up. You're obviously aware of it. What is your take on that?
Just the thought that, municipalities have a certain code they have to, adhere to. So they have their needs, but I think the show promoters who also have needs, especially in times of crisis, they are probably waiting for the authorities, such as the municipality, to give them the rulings that they can't proceed, and then they can effectively enact their insurance situation.
See, and I think that's a big part of it. I think that the insurance is a situation. I think obviously legality is coming from a government official makes more sense. It makes more sense for the promoters also to be able to kind of shift the focus away from themselves, that they don't have to take the blame, the hits, the knock, as it may be. But yeah, I found that interesting, and obviously you noticed it too. Chris, Kyle, do you have another take on why that might be?
You know, I get it, but talking about the legalities of it, so you walk outside, you catch it just by randomly walking through somewhere. So who you going to sue? The city? You're going to sue the air? You're going to sue somebody who's walking around you? Makes no sense. Again, it's a virus that you get like everything else. Half of us probably already have it, don't even know it, and everybody's trying to get a buck off something for nothing. Come on now, give me a break.
Well, let's be honest though, it's not a virus like everything else. Again, we've had that conversation. This thing isn't the flu, but this is
It's
what's
part of the
interesting. It's
flu.
come out a lot lately. It's not just that it spreads by people being so close together. The problem with a large scale event, similar by the way, Banks, to the situation in large congregations, which you may have heard already from others, it's because of the singing. It's because of the audience all singing to the artists together. By singing out loud, they are invariably spreading their germs, their droplets to everyone around them. And that actually is the biggest reason that live events can't come back so quickly.
So I have a question. I'm just curious. So out here in Marietta, and I have friends that live like in the Gardena area, but Marietta is about 90 miles from Gardena, give or take. So Target in Marietta, you walk into Target, nobody has masks on. There's full of everything. No problem. You go to Target in Gardena, you have to wear a mask. You have to wear this. You have to wear that. If it's so like what everybody's saying it is, it should be the same in both counties. It should be the same everywhere. So why is it that 90 miles away it's no problem, but in the inner city it's an epidemic?
I mean, that's a good question. Although I think the answer is it comes down to leadership and responsibility for making those
But
decisions.
again,
There's
if it's
been
if it's that lethal like everybody's saying it is,
well,
I'm not saying what
the
I'm saying.
president isn't saying it's lethal, but
What
he's
I'm
not.
saying, yes, but this is what it is. They say approximately, probably 80%, if not more, are asymptomatic. Just like if you have a cold, you're asymptomatic. If you have a
Well,
flu, you can
some
be
are saying that.
asymptomatic.
Some are
So,
saying that.
but
We don't
again,
know that that's the
and
truth.
and now they're saying there's a spike. How can you know there was a spike? There was never ever a control to know who had it, who didn't have it. So one
You-
minute is killing everybody and it's ravaging everything, and then the next minute it's doing absolutely nothing. Not well, I'm not saying absolutely nothing, but it's not as lethal as people are saying it is. Is it something out there that's boosting situation, as maybe enhancing what you could already have? Of course, I'm not refuting that, but to shut the world down in the United States, to shut the world down literally for two stadiums worth of people who have succumbed to it is ludicrous.
Well, again, we're trying
100,
to. We,
100
they
okay, they say, okay, now on top of that, they say there's just use round numbers, 1.6 million people, cases of it. 100,000 have died. That means 1.5 have recovered or are recovering.
well, but
Nobody's talking. Nobody's
wait.
talking
Okay,
about the
hold on,
recovery.
hold on.
Nobody's talking about the recovery.
First of all, that is a very large percentage of people that have died
No,
compared
but
to
what I'm
any
saying,
other virus.
if you say 100, there's 106, 1.6 million cases. This is just this is the math that they're giving us. 1.6 million cases. 100,000 have died. That means 1.5 are recovering or have recovered.
that still means more than 5% of the people that have gotten it have died. So that is a large number, a large percentage.
Again, that number is even relatively low
But
because
okay,
realistically, more people have had it or have it than they even know.
but let's
Hell,
dispense with this.
the test isn't
Mhm.
even true. The test is half wrong. So 1 in 4 people take a test, and one of them is wrong.
Right, but 1 in 1.5 people haven't been able to get a test yet. So let's
I
not
don't
even.
want I
We,
don't
we
want the
don't
test,
know
nor do
the
I
number.
even want to get a vaccination. I never even had a flu vaccination, and I
Okay,
never will get one.
all right. I hear you. I appreciate. Rant over. You good?
I'm balanced as always.
I appreciate the spirit of the discussion. I still think that in the absence of adequate testing, there's no way to truly quantify the numbers. I think the reason that the measures that were taken was because that we wanted to avoid that the number of deaths being north of 1 million, which is, I mean, thank goodness it's not, and let's hope it doesn't get there. We still don't know. We won't know. The reason that there is so much unknowing is because, again, one, absence of genuine leadership, two, absence of consistency, three, just the news cycle and the way social media and the internet has changed the world. Information goes so quickly. The president does everything he can to distract attention from anything that makes him look bad, because why the fuck would he care about anybody else when it's more important he cares about himself and no one else? Again, I'll stop on that, but
I'm gonna just say this:
here we are.
with the death of George Floyd, they choke him out, but he has coronavirus all of a sudden from weeks before. What the hell? Give me a break. They throw coronavirus on everybody. You get shot in the chest. Oh, he died of coronavirus. Give me a break.
I mean, you're scooping me if that's true. I did not know that. It certainly doesn't change my position of the situation. I can't imagine it changes yours. I understand what you're the point you're trying to make, but moving on. Moving on, there are still agents out there that think that concerts are coming back. I know that because I'm actually on the distro list for a few of the major territorial agents from different companies around this business. Primarily country artists, mind you, but definitely still artists and agents out there circulating avails for 2020. Who knows? Who knows? Again, this news cycle moves so quickly. I don't think any of us know the answer. Kyle and I can go on and on about this all day long. Both of us are fully capable of playing both sides here. I just think the answer is we don't know. But to lend some perspective, to bring a little international flavor to the program, today we are introducing our first international guest. Very happy to have him with us. He is from Rotterdam, which is in the Netherlands, close to The Hague, part of the country considered called Holland. Once upon a time, I think people thought Holland was the Netherlands. It's not actually the case. Rotterdam's about 90 kilometers from Amsterdam. Interesting little factoid. It was once known as the spy center of the world. It's also Europe's biggest seaport, which could explain the whole spy situation. But anyway, just wanted to give everybody a little history lesson there. Our guest today started in a 350 cap rock club. Featured artists like Nick Lowe, U2, Tom Petty, Talking Heads. He became the lighting and set designer of one of the few major Dutch rock bands to ever have a hit, a band called Golden Earring. I'm not sure many of our listeners, to be honest with you, will know who that is. But out of lighting and set design, he actually took an interest in rigging, which I have a lot of questions about. Certainly begs the question, is he a bit of a daredevil, risk taker, lunatic, what have you? But this gentleman formed Rotterdam Rigging in 1995, was involved in the Sochi and Rio Olympics in 2014 and 16, respectively. He later founded Show Group in Santiago, Chile. So talk about spreading himself around the world and not necessarily in the places everyone else is going. and then more recently formed All for Events and Entertainment back home in the Netherlands. Please welcome Marcus Musia.
Hi there.
Did I say your last name right? Musia?
Yeah, it's Musia. Yeah, it's okay.
Musia.
Musia.
I apologize for that. Marcus
That's
Musia,
okay.
thank you for being with us. Did I get your bio right? Can you add anything to that?
Yeah. Well, I had a brief a moment of I had a company in Moscow with a couple of riggers there, but thanks to the ruble going down in comparison with the euro, I decided to stop my business in Russia, and we moved over to Santiago, Chile. Yeah, but
Interesting.
apart from that, you pretty much nailed it. Yeah.
So I do know a little something about the Netherlands just because I happen to have recently started managing a group called Let It Happen, based in the southern part of the Netherlands, which is
Okay.
nowhere close to Amsterdam. And what I'm finding is, one, most of the people that I talk to in the States have no idea where the Netherlands is.
Well,
Two,
everybody's heard of Amsterdam.
well, I was going to say the few that have heard of it
Yeah.
think it's Amsterdam and nothing else. I was just talking to the other day a major executive who is a major artist himself for many, many years, has been in the business for literally 35 years. I won't say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he literally said, I've never even been to the Netherlands. And I said, you've never been to Amsterdam? And he said, oh, I've been to Amsterdam many times. And
Yeah.
that just tells you what people know about the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But even with this group of mine, Let It Happen, you know, we've been starting to do some film and television, some opportunities in music, and trying to find examples of other young artists doing what they're doing and leaning on them or looking to the way they've started building their business in the Netherlands is almost impossible because of how few examples there are. And again, I said people don't know Golden Earring, but I think a lot of our audience would be even more surprised to hear that there was once a major act called the Netherlands called Earth and Fire.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Earth, Wind, and Fire. Earth
Yeah.
and Fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but they're not existing anymore. Golden Earring still does, and you had another band that was pretty famous in the States, but it was in the '60s called Shocking Blue. They had the number Venus. Remember
Okay.
that one?
To be honest, the
No?
name of the band sounds familiar. I can't say I know the track. I will go
Venus.
back and listen for sure.
Okay.
And thank you for the education.
Yeah.
But again, it speaks to, I mean, to me, it just doesn't seem like there are a ton of people, of Dutch people coming into this business. It's a very small country in the first place, but I mean, again, tell us a little more about what got you interested. Tell us about the club and the experience you had starting out with some of these legendary bands that were coming through.
Well, in I'm talking about the late '70s, or and there was a lot of there was in Amsterdam you had Paradiso. Club still exists, and there was because there was a lot of bands touring that were doing small clubs. Don't think you nowadays most of the bands they really go up the ladder really fast. They, especially with YouTube, and all of a sudden you can't even keep up with how much fame they accumulate in very short time. But in those days, you had the British pub rock, which were bands that were playing. They had to play clubs to make a living, and I guess the same thing was in the States. Although there was no, they were just bands trying to tour, and so in this club where I worked, there was only I think maximum audience was 350 people. I would see like Tom Waits, Steel Pulse. British rock groups, Doctor Feelgood, and the stage was 1.5 less than 5 feet high. I mean, it was it was there was no, you would stand almost on stage when it was, everything was, you were standing up real close. So we saw, I did see Simple Minds, U2, for an audience of 200, nobody knew who they were. And then a couple of years later, they were too big for even the Ahoy Hall or the bigger arenas. But that to me was so interesting to see these bands work, and I wanted to be a part of that. The intensity, especially the was very creative with small sets of lighting and the whole intensity of this, especially of these small groups, was to me was very inspiring. So I wanted to be a part of that. I started working for not only for local as a local technician, but also I wanted to go on tour with bands.
So you
that's how
pick up with. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, so and then I got involved with some bigger acts in the Netherlands, and then because of the local promoters like Mojo Concerts, which was pretty. They would do a lot of international touring acts, getting them to, fly them in to the Netherlands or to Europe, and then they would need local technicians because because of the costs, to cut the costs. So I would work for, I don't know, so many, like I don't know. There was, well, Dr. Feelgood. I did a 2-week tour. The Stranglers, the punk scene came up in those days. You had a punk rock band, The Damned. There was. I did a couple of shows for Joy Division in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. So that's how I got involved in the touring business. And then I was asked by Golden Earring, who was that at those days they were pretty big. They just had a big hit in the USA with Twilight Zone. They were pretty big because they had the #1 hit, Good Radar Love, just a couple of years before I joined them, and from there on I stayed with the Golden Earring for, I think, 26 years or so. I did a lot of tours with them.
So, first of all, shout out to Mojo Concerts. I'm glad you mentioned them. They're still around. They still produce world-class festivals.
Yeah.
Martin, JC, Jan Chris, some really great people there. Big fan.
Sean Mulder, Sean Mulder, of course.
Mm-hmm.
He was my predecessor with Golden Earring. He was the light technician before. He's now CEO of Mojo Concerts.
Nice. Yeah. Very nice. Well, I'm glad you mentioned them. I definitely have an affinity for those guys. And both, and again, they do everything from small clubs on up to world-class major festivals. They are, great producers across the Netherlands in particular, and just really good people, do a first-class job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you start out, as I understand, as you're moving into major arena size artist production, doing lighting, but you transition into rigging. Why rigging? I don't. That doesn't seem like a common path to me.
Well, I in those days there was not too many really big jobs in the Netherlands or in Western Europe. So I had a I was in with Golden Earring, and also with I did some fashion shows in Paris, and I would have carte blanche, uh, if you understand my French, for designing and doing the show exactly the way I wanted to. You know, the only
Mhm.
the only person I had to talk to was like with Jean-Paul Gaultier was the Jean-Paul Gaultier with Frank Govers, a Dutch designer. It was Frank Govers, and with the Golden Earring, it was Barry Hay, the lead singer, and the rest. They just wanted to have certain moments that they were not in the dark, and the follow spots were on them, during solos. But apart from that, I I could pretty much decide what I wanted to. And then later on, I was asked by other artists or other shows like some one time I remember I was asked to do a lighting show for a big fashion show, and there was a director involved and a creative director, and I couldn't handle those guys. They were they would they were they you know you to me it was too stressful, and I didn't really like the stressful part of it and not being able to be creative. I would I was slowly um, being set in a position where I was just a guy who could operate a desk really good, and like a like a secretary. Like I was only typing the show as fast as possible, and there was this some guy sitting next to me and with crazy ideas, and there I didn't like the struggle with the interaction with these people. So so and I but I liked the I liked rigging, the because it was adventurous, especially in those days. There were no safety lines. It was kind of uh, um, there was an element. There was a technical element. We first started. Of course, we started doing Vectorworks drawings, and then trying to make sure that we can hang as much as possible in a venue, even go way up to the limit. And there was for me that was more satisfying. Plus, I didn't have to talk to the creative people of of the the bands I was working for, or the concerts or the productions I was doing, but I was just talking to the technical people, and and I um, I found out that I had um, more shared interests with the technical people than with the so-called designers and creative people.
So
So
you
that's
really actually just raised two of the questions that I was going to ask you next,
yeah,
and I'm so
yeah,
glad that you did. The
yeah.
first one, of course, is who in their right fucking mind wants to climb 60, 80, 100 feet in the air to walk across a piece of steel hanging literally by a small piece of thread? If that, as you said back then, there were often no supports, nothing to
Yeah.
to keep you from falling to your death. That is
Well,
one, but you don't have
yeah.
to answer that one.
Oh,
That
okay.
that I mean, you can, but of course, the second part of that question, which I think is actually, I mean, maybe more interesting to me, not necessarily to our viewers. So, of course, feel free to tackle both. But the second part of that question was in relation to, you referenced the Vectorworks. You referenced the technical elements of the job.
Mhm.
And that to me is actually really interesting, because we've talked to a number of industry professionals and vendors that vendors are increasingly being looked at as technology companies.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if you can talk to us about how the concept of STEM learning and technology factor into rigging.
I don't really know what you mean with STEM. STEM. What,
STEM is science, technology. What is the rest of it? Engineering and mathematics.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I can. The first, still let me go back to your first question. The first,
Sure.
there was we had an artist in Holland. He was a very big fan of Frank Sinatra, and he would go to see Frank Sinatra's show in Las Vegas every year. And he wanted to do a Frank Sinatra show, himself in Ahoy in Rotterdam, big venue, 18,000 people seated, and he had some guy, he had an American rigger, Vance Bryan, and an American light designer, Steve Kemp, fly in from the States to set this up. And of course, these guys needed to work with the local people. I was one of those people. And at one point, there was some arguments about somebody had to fix something in the roof, and somebody got really pissed off. And I was sitting backstage with some people in those days. The first fairy lights came out. They were very hush about the technology, so they were all under lock and key, and the technicians operating them, they were sitting backstage, and I was very much interested in those new lighting systems, so I was sitting with them, and we were drinking some scotch, and then all of a sudden the guy, the Vance Bryan, came in, and he was really pissed. So we thought we had a problem because we didn't want him to know that we were just have taken our first glass of scotch. And he shouted to me that he had a problem and he needed some guy to fix it for him. So I was more scared of getting caught. So I ran over to where I had to go up in the roof, and I said, "Oh no, no worry, I'll fix it, Vance. No problem. I'll fix it for you." And I climbed into the roof, and I fixed it without thinking, and then everything was all. And I fixed the problem. I came down, and he said, "Have you ever considered rigging? You don't have, you're not afraid of heights, are you?" No, 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 I don't know. So that's and he was a very famous rigger. He had Vanguard rigging. I don't know. Maybe you heard of the company. It was in '85, and so that's how I got involved in rigging. And in those days, you would to get to the second question. In those days, we would make lighting plots with transparent paper on top of each other, like layers, and we would make the truss. We'd make drawings of the trusses, and then on top we would make drawings of the lighting, and then on top we put another layer of transparent paper, and we would with black pen we would mark the channels, and we would mark the colors, and then and how we would put it in the dimmer racks. Those were the old days, all analog, no computers, nothing. And then we also had to think of how calculate the weight in the roof. So we did all that. So when we started working with in those days Minicut, the first programs from I think back then it was Deal Graphisoft, or what now it's called Vectorworks, Nemetschek, and we started, but we had the discipline of working with layers, classes, and so I gradually grew into drawing the same drawings I did on paper, but then with a computer. And nowadays we have Braceworks, we have we can almost go to where so we can almost give the calculations to the constructors companies from the venues, like it's their wet dream. They don't have to do anything anymore. They just see if the drawing, if the calculations are correct, and we get a green light. Usually, we have sometimes I remember with Madonna in the Amsterdam Arena, I think there was 140 kilograms left in the roof. It was a 140-ton set, and it should have been hung from a Stageco roof, but we skipped the Stageco roof, and we hung it all in the roof of the Amsterdam Arena. So, and there was no problem with the constructors company from the venue. So, does that answer your question, or?
Sure. So let's talk about it, take it a little bit further then. So this past weekend here in the States, an ironworker fell at the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, fell 60 feet to his death.
Oh, wow.
And that reminded us, we were talking about this on a program the other day, about a rigger who had passed at Coachella a couple of years ago. I'm sure you're familiar.
Yeah, I've heard of, I'm familiar with that one, yeah.
So in considering the weights and the balance and all of the other, as we would say, STEM-related technical considerations, talk to us a little bit about the liability that's involved, and not just the safety of you or the people that you employ as riggers, but the safety of the artists that are below and the audience too, for that matter.
Well, we have in Europe there is a lot of. Well, first of all, let me put it this way. My company, I employ 24 people, and 4 people in the office, and then 20 people riggers. They have to, when they start working for me, the first 3 weeks they do nothing but take courses. They have to have their health and safety. They have to have their be able to I don't know how you call this. We call it BFA. It's
certification.
A certification for you have to be able to resuscitate somebody, or give first aid.
Oh, okay.
Then you have to have level 1 errata training, which is a week training. Then you have TCVT W48 training, which is a week training where we that's industrial training for carrying heavy loads. In Holland, in Europe, everything under 5,000 kilograms you can do without this training. Although most of the times, like we use Columbus McInnes motors, or the heaviest the lift you can do is 2,000 kilo. But if you combine those, you do lift more than 5,000 kilograms. So I decided to get all my staff trained for a week in this TCVT W48 certificate, which is very which is you can this it's the last part before you start doing the training for heavy crane lifting. So then some people who I employ get the Vectorworks training, and if they get the Vectorworks training, some of them go through and get the training, which it is we call it bouwkunde, which is like building engineering. Similar. It's not a it's a weekly course, and also they get a separate training to do braceworks. So that's all. That's a lot of training. I mean, that's if you do it, if you all combine it, it will take you at least 3 months to do this training, and sometimes I've had it that they take the training and they decide it's not for them. So it's the risk I'm willing to take, but in order to achieve safe rigging as for themselves, doing the errata and the health and safety, and for the people who are standing under the loads, do the construction engineering and heavy lifting engineering courses. So that's what I do as a company to eliminate risk. And then in Germany, I think this is going to be I think it's going to be worldwide regulations, because even American acts nowadays, when they come to Germany, everybody wants to have the double brake and a much higher safety factor on dynamic load. So every load hung above audiences or artists in Europe now, well, especially in Germany, has to be factor 1 to 10 with a double brake. So and if you can't do that, then you have to do separate safeties, which I think, and the stages here, like Stageco, they do use over dimension on their they also use high safety factors on their constructions. So I think that's how we try to eliminate. I think the last person dying in Holland was a rigger. I think it was 12 years ago or something, and it was somebody who went in the roof without a harness, and he really fucked up. He made terrible mistakes, and there was nobody to tell him not to make these mistakes. But
Tell me again the term you used when you talked about the double safety. Did you say that was dynamic rigging? Is that what that was called?
No, well, it's C1. We have B W8 plus,
Mm-hmm.
and then you so you have D8 plus, and then you have SIL 3, which you do with dynamic, like with anything like Tate uses SIL 3 systems, where the hoists know, especially if they're moving hoists, if they operate moving parts, where you want to have where you want to know the capacity, or you want to constantly know how much weight is under the motor. So there is also always a load cell involved, and if there's more than one hoist carrying the same load, there's all kinds of safety measures when one hoist gets little or no load, detects not enough load, then it will stop. Or when it gets too much weight on the hoist, it will stop too. So I think there is a lot of regulations and safety devices coming into the industry, and it's also necessary because the loads are getting a lot more heavy nowadays, and also the sets are getting much more complicated. It's not like in the old days. In the old days when we had a big show, it was 40 hoists. That was really big. That was like Saxon, a big heavy, or Iron Maiden. I remember they had I don't know, they had 50 hoists or something for their show. Now, if you see, they started touring last year again. I think they had 160 in hoist, and that's not even a big show for us. I mean,
That's a pretty big show, I will say.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, honestly, I've always had tremendous respect for riggers and rigging. I never considered all of the engineering considerations and the certification you're referring to. I am curious, and you did allude to this. Are these? I mean, great to hear your company is doing them, but are they European standards? Are they global standards? It certainly sounds like they should be.
Well, no, there is not. I mean, I think now Corona is doing actually a great job for now. All of a sudden, we have like a sort of union coming up for dry hire companies in the entertainment business, rigging companies in the entertainment business, and then there is a union there's to because now we need now we have to try to talk to the government with one voice, and try to make sure that all the demands of all these small companies and entertainment companies, and also the bigger companies like Mojo Concerts and dry hire companies in Holland, and production companies are being heard. So now all of a sudden there is a lot of talk between all these people trying to. So I think if if we could do this internationally, you can maybe get some sort of standard for the business. But it was never this way. I mean, everybody now is following. What I think, the touring, you guys are touring people. If you know that when you come to Germany, you have the strictest regulations in the world, because they want double safeties everywhere. They were always called a pain in the ass. You had to wear helmets. Everybody, all kinds of regulations. The load exceeding 75% of the capacity of the hoist should be double safety, and so you see that now that lately the touring the bands who do world tours, and when they go to Europe, they just take the German safety, so they know they're good in Italy, France, Belgium, England. So it's gonna happen, but it's not official.
Well, we talk a lot about improved standards on this podcast. We talk a lot
Yeah,
about taking advantage of this break from the workflow in order to
yeah,
in order to make those improvements. And
Yeah.
we talked to Jim Digby of the Event Safety Alliance, if you're familiar with Jim. Of course, Jim had a tragic occurrence early in his career where a light fixture killed a woman right in front of him.
Oh wow.
And he's been on a crusade for a number of years to improve safety measures. He talks about how the event safety guide in the States is the equivalent of essentially the Purple Book in Europe. And again, so much of what you're talking about, I mean, I never want to do a tour again where there aren't double safeties on everything, where there are.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all about efficiency, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
safety comes first.
Yeah.
Absolutely number one. And the rigger really does have a critical job in terms of keeping people secure, because they are, responsible for what is above people's heads.
Yeah.
And, to your point, 160 plus points is
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
weight to be considered, and a lot of stress. And
Yeah.
I can only hope that there are additional safety measures taken worldwide that are embraced globally. Are there enough qualified riggers worldwide? And are there certification programs in the States and elsewhere, Asia, Australia, etc., to really properly train these people?
No.
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 Should you
That's
be that
why.
guy?
No.
Is that your next
Huh?
venture? I'm just
No.
saying.
No. No.
10%
I went
here. That's all I'm asking. I mean, let's do this.
No. No. I went to when I started in Chile. I remember that I flew there, and Phil Collins was doing his show there, and they had a scaffolding stage built with. I mean, I would. I was scared to even walk on the stage. They were hanging, big sets of lighting and big sound systems, and it was all scaffolding. I mean, they had, of course. I mean, I remember when first Bruce Springsteen show in Rotterdam in Feyenoord in the Kuip, in a big stadium here. It's 80,000 people see this stadium. It's really big, but that was in '84. I mean, and they only did it once like this. They immediately, health and safety people from Rotterdam, they couldn't cancel the show, but they, this was something nobody wanted to see another time. And in Chile, they still doing shows like this. And now they bought a very big aluminum stage from Eurotruss in Holland. So they bought a stage where with arches and diagonals and something that was that you build up with hoists, not with cranes. And so there is there is a lot of countries still where there is a lot of people, um, very, they're willing and they want to learn, but they're still pretty much in the dark ages, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's like you're anticipating my questions here. I'm glad that we've got this rhythm going, because my next question was, I mean, all of us here have been to Santiago, Chile for one tour or another,
Yeah.
mostly, doing
Well,
the
then you know the
Lollapaloozas
stage in
and what have
the
you.
outdoor arena, in
What's that?
the soccer stadium where there's the
Yeah,
show.
where who died? Some dreadful thing happened there. There's some horrible history there. There was some horrible history there years ago.
Yeah.
The weather grid fell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
what was your impetus for starting a company there? Unless it's just the obvious that you saw the need, because good grief, the resources in South America leave
Well, they
something to
didn't
be
have
desired, and the
they
standards
didn't have
are.
loads. They didn't have hoists. They didn't have trussing. So, and at the end of the Olympic Games in Brazil, I had some Brazilian guys wanting to buy the set. I had three containers of material, mostly hoists and some trusses, and they were really very enthusiastic to buy the material because there was they wanted to do the Pan American Games and some other. There was a big festival in Buenos Aires, and so they asked me if and but it was a big deal. It was a 3.5 million euro deal, and in the end, I found out that they were trying to rob me. You know, they were trying to make they were making payments, but as soon as I wanted to get the money, shift the money to another account, the money would be gone. So they would make wire transfers and then get the money back. So the deal didn't go through because they were not legit. And then a buddy of mine, a Czechoslovakian, Stano Kušik, he we decided we wanted to do go in the tender for the Pan American Games. But in order to do so, we had to have a South American company, and we decided the most stable government in South America was Chile because of the banking system, and also um, because of Montevideo, you could easily import material to Chile. So we thought we start in Chile. We start that as our base, and then we try to get these two major events like the Pan American Games and then this Buenos Aires big festival and Lollapalooza in Santiago. And but it we didn't win the tender for the Pan American Games, and Buenos Aires Argentina was going bankrupt. So we just thought, well, then we just started dry hiring in Santiago. But um, my buddy is still having this company. It's called Show Group, but I quit because I couldn't handle the fact that they would hire stuff and then they would come and it would go in open lorries, and then the next day they would come back and need more, and it's crazy. the, it's very unorganized, and everything is very ad hoc, very on the spur of the moment. There's no planning, no drawings made up. It's So that's why I got out. But it could have worked, but there was no ideology for me to educate Latin America or so.
Well, again, we've all seen what that means in terms of the production resources available. So, kudos to
Yeah.
you for even trying. Certainly, it sounds like it takes a mind like yours and an understanding of those safety standards and the engineering and so forth to
Yeah.
to get into business at that level and in remote parts of the world where resources may be limited, and stands to reason this has something to do with why you're getting Olympic Games. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, what was your experience in Sochi and in Rio? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, Sochi was crazy because the um, the Russians, they really, they are. First of all, I love the Russian people, and the people in Sochi were great too. But they are, and they have the resources to make. They really can build. I mean, no doubt about it. But they were very hard on the people working there. They are. It's a very hierarchic. Um, co- yeah, it's a very high. The hierarchy in Russia is crazy. I mean, you got to go to a lot of bureaucracy to get something done. But I really liked it. It the buildings they made, and the stadiums, they were really, I've never seen anything like it. Making, like Sochi was a small like San Moritz, like it was a small like Sun Valley, Idaho. It was I don't know, that's even big, but it was a small um, um, ski resort, and all of a sudden they have highways and stadiums to where you can sit 140,000 people. It was, everything was over the top. It was really great. And then Brazil was well, Brazil. What can you tell about Brazil? Everybody in Brazil got mugged. There was there was no bureaucracy in Brazil, but there was. I've never seen so many police and checkpoints, and you come in. They don't check you once; they check you 20 or 30 times or so.
Hmm.
But Brazil was also good for us. My team, they like to travel. They like to go places. And of course, with productions like this, you spend like at least 3 or 4, sometimes 5 months in. So the logistics is tough. We have to arrange for our own um, like we have to find apartments for reasonable prices. So it's for me, the fun part is to organize the logistics, the production, the sleeping facilities, the cars, the transportation from here to Brazil or Sochi, and then back, and also to make sure that the equipment is safe and nobody can steal. Those are the that's what I like to do. Yeah.
So, since then, you've formed a company back home, all for events and entertainment.
Yeah.
I, what type of things are you doing? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we thought about, because this was going to be for us. This was going to be a very good year, because we were looking at the Eurovision Song Festival Grand Prix in Zandvoort, which is Formula One. We had Invictus Games, which is for soldiers who are wounded. It's very big, like it's under the IOC, like part of the Olympic organization. We had UEFA. I think it was the European Cup. I can go on and on and on. We had so much work lined up. So There is always, apart from rigging, there is even bigger demand for like pipe and drape, curtains, um, um, couches, refrigerators, lights, small desks, and I hooked up with a guy who had all areas for. They did a lot of. They were one of the side companies for Mojo concerts, and and we decided to. He sold his company, and he was a little bored, and then we decided to hook up and start to provide these items for big concerts. So we say everything without a plug. We rent everything without a plug. Yeah.
Interesting.
So the dressing, everything in the dressing room, and the only thing in the dressing room with a plug will be the some very not so sophisticated lighting and a refrigerator. But
I'm
we
a
do
little bit amused
carpeting.
by this, of course, because
Eh?
again, rigging we know isn't doesn't require plugs either. Presumably plugs, audio, lighting, video, etc. But in talking about all the technical considerations and all of that, you
Yeah.
went almost the other way when you came back home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have with the rigging company. My clients are like PAG UK, PAG Germany, Neck Earth, Unusual Rigging, and Holland, the bigger production companies uh, in Germany and in Belgium, and so the my people and my materials, they I don't have, there is I'm they easily find me, and since our people are our staff is high standard, and also the materials are high standard, so it's very easy for me to rent the materials, as well as do productions, because we have the staff to do so. So I had some time and opportunity to do something else, and so I did. Yeah.
So tell us this. Venues across Europe are starting to reopen slowly, granted limited capacity. Certainly the festivals this season seem to have gone away, much like everywhere else in the world. But the US is, of course, way behind the curve.
Yeah.
Certainly, there are Nordic regions not far from you where they believe mid size events will be happening in the immediate future. Um,
Yeah. Well,
I
I
mean,
think, yeah, I think in the beginning, now there's only a matter of the governments, because the most, like, Lowlands was only cancelled a month ago, because they were still because they had pandemic insurance, most of these festivals, and because they couldn't, if you cancel the festival, then you don't get pandemic insurance. But if the government says they are not allowed, then they get the money from the insurance companies. I think they hope so, because there is so many companies now claiming these claims to insurance companies. But so what we're waiting for is for a light at the end of the tunnel, and the governments to say that we can do major events up to, like, say 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, or so people and when. And also there is a lot of talk now if like now they want to say, they say for example you can have live events until 1,000 people, but they don't say how many people per square meter or per square
Hmm.
meter you can have. So, for example, the Ziggo Dome in Amsterdam, you can have 18,000 people there. So, but if now the government has restrictions from events up till 1,000 people. So, but the there is a we like to know if this if big events can do, like if we rather have like the restrictions that we can do like a quarter people per meter. Like normally an event will count 3.1 3.20 persons per square meter. And with all these restrictions, if we say okay, now you can do like 0.4 persons per meter, then you would still have in a venue where you can easily normally would do 1,000 people, you could do with the proper measures, you could do 400 people. So we are trying to have a dialogue with the government to make sure that there is that we can think about more venues with high capacity venues, getting the amount of people allowed in to get those rates figures up, get the amounts higher. So and also they are looking into what to do with air conditioning or with with high with making sure
Purification.
that, yeah, with air conditioning, yeah,
Hmm.
well with yeah. And they I think so. I think we're only 3 months in lockdown, and now they're easing off on the restrictions. I think in another 3 months you'll see that there's a lot of venues are opening up, and you'll see the numbers going up, because I don't think they, even if we get a second wave, I think they can go back to the heavy restrictions that we had in the beginning. I don't
Well, I
think
think
so.
that that's a sentiment everywhere. I'm not sure that the U.S. is anywhere close to the reopening the way you're talking about. The consideration sounds like you guys are
Well, I
leagues
think
ahead
in
of
New
the rest
York
of
they're
us.
bending the curve. I like Cuomo. He
Hmm.
looks like he's a sensible guy, and I think they are. I think they're going in the right direction.
Well, I certainly hope you're right, but I'm thinking specifically in terms of, do I believe concerts will be back in a substantial capacity in the states in 3 months? No, not a chance. I can only hope that there will be opportunities for some of us over there. And by the way, you can feel free to keep the four of us on this podcast in mind. I'm just floating that out there for you.
Yeah,
Okay, 4 months we'll be back, not three, but we're gonna be back.
yeah,
Oh,
I'm sure. Yeah, yeah.
well, Marcus, you've given us a lot to think about.
Oh,
We're almost 80 minutes in here, and we could keep going. I feel like for another 80, we'll have to talk about getting you back one of these days. But I think it's time we move into our quick hits. And if you could tell us about, what was your favorite tour?
there was '89. I did the Golden Earring. We did a European tour, and we were the last big band playing in Berlin before the wall was torn down, before
Wow.
the end of the the Cold War. We it was this was something I will never forget. We were after the show. We were, of course, we like to party, so we wanted to go out, and there was at Berlin Alexanderplatz there was some club that was open, and the only people in the club were Vopos, which was the East German police, and girls. So so the there was the we I got to experience the extreme oppression of the East German government for uh, 2 or 3 hours. Yeah,
That's
that was amazing. We had to go to Checkpoint Charlie. I've been in Berlin many times. I did a lot of shows in Berlin, but this one was in East Berlin. It was organized by the government back then because the like the barriers, they were anti-tank barriers. Everything was built by the military. The 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 light systems, they were all, it was crazy. It was something I will never forget in my life. 89, good year.
good to hear.
And I
So
think 2 months later they tore down the wall. Yeah, after we've been there.
I'm sure that you had something to do with that too, and we don't have to debate that any longer. I'm going to just
No.
trust that that's the case. You clearly bring that to the table here,
Mm.
and thank you,
Yeah.
Marcus. You've been amazing. If there is one thing about the industry you'd like to see us doing better as we reopen, what would that be?
Well, I would say um, um, I would I wrote down safety and payment because I think there's a lot of times but where there is I don't know how it is in the States, but in Europe sometimes, I mean, most people, they in this industry, they like what they're doing, and they don't do it for the money, of course. I mean, they do it because they're in love with the business, with the entertainment business, with seeing live shows, and they want to be a part of it. But nowadays, with a lot of expert, there's a lot of people who have tremendous expertise. The technicians, the whole technical side of the business is going so fast, and I think there is sometimes in payment we are not. So I here in Europe, we're losing a lot of people who eventually get out of the business because they want to buy a house, and they don't get enough. They in comparison to other jobs, they just get a lot less money. And the other issue is safety. I still think there is, especially not in the rich countries like Western Europe, especially Northwestern Europe countries, but in the farther south you go, and especially like in Latin America, there is a lot of. I think there's a lot to. We can do a lot about safety, and like touring business is very it's nowadays. I think it's getting a lot better, especially with the American tour productions we see they have the the they bring good systems, good safety systems. People are not so worn by touring, but sometimes you see guys that have an average sleep per day of about 3 or 4 hours. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, you can't do that for a couple of months. So that's something I think that's something you should be looking at.
Well, I
More.
share your sentiments completely. I
Yeah,
definitely appreciate all of that.
yeah.
Last and final question. Any parting shots, shout outs, anything like that that you'd like to extend?
Well, I don't no, not really. I think I think that we there in Holland there is a lot of talk about the what we call the 1.5 meter new the new the new reality, which is the 1.5 meter reality, and if you would translate it, it would be the 5 foot 5 foot reality. And I don't think I think that's all bullshit. I think that's something we don't want. We want to go to the Lowlands Festival. We want to, young people like to be like to get touched, like to touch other young people, and they like to be in close proximity of one another, and they like to share. Um, 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 how do you say? They like to see bands and experience uh, new things, and that's and that and you then, if you want to do that, you want to go to a festival, you want to go to where you get you go to a circus or a festival, or you don't want to be cooped up in your house watching Netflix or HBO, or sitting on your telephone. I mean, they that's what they do too. But so I don't think it's this new 5 foot society, or this new reality is going to last much longer. I think it's by the end of by I think it's at the most April 2021, and then this is going to be nothing but a bad dream.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, as they say. I hope
Yeah.
that is true. Marcus, you have been amazing. I thank you so much. Rotterdam Rigging, all for events and entertainment. I hope everyone will check you out, look you up, contact your company, consider the safety standards and regulations and certifications you talked about, adapt those practices, and globally, worldwide, let's make a better business. You are definitely one of the people that is leading the way. We appreciate you. You are a true hustler. And until next time, everybody, thank you and good night.